It's kind of weird that a first overall pick is also kind of an underdog story in a lot of ways, but that is kind of the case with Baker Mayfield, and I think a large part of the reason why it is because while he did go first overall, a lot of people thought that Sam Darnold was going to go ahead of him. But he definitely proved why he was the first overall pick by throwing 27 touchdowns and 3,725 yards in just 14 games. He is the highest rookie I have on this list, and I think it's for very good reason. He's had some very good throws last year and some very good plays last year, not to mention just some very good games last year. One of the things that makes him so effective would be something like this, where it's going to be a cover 2 zone, and what Cleveland is going to do is, despite the fact that they're at their own 2-yard line, they're going to have a tight end run an out route right over there. Then they're going to run play action, and the play action will actually work a little bit better because it is, at the 2-yard line, so your opposing team is going to expect that it is going to be a run, and it can actually help sell that it is a play action. It'll help the linebackers move in, and you could throw it over the top of them. That's just something that could happen. And as you see, once this ball is snapped and the play develops, the receiver is going to get open. So, this play is working out. Cleveland has already done their part. But what I really like about this play is look at Baker Mayfield, and more importantly, look at just how patient he is. He's just so calm, despite the fact that he's standing in his own end zone. I know that's not a huge thing, and that's not something that maybe a lot of people would talk about as super impressive, but, a lot of guys do kind of panic in these situations and try to get this ball off as quick as they possibly can, but Baker is waiting, and Baker knows that if he waits longer, it can allow him to pick up more yards. And he's also being smart and knowing that there isn't any immediate pressure, so he can wait a little bit longer, and then when he does make the throw, it's easily a completion. And that's also another thing about him is he's very accurate, and he made just about a perfect throw there, and that's what led to a 25-yard gain. That is actually why I have him at number 19 in the top quarterback rankings, and why I have him higher than any other quarterback that was drafted in his draft class as of today, is because he already plays like a veteran. I mean, granted, worth mentioning, he is actually 24, so it's not like he's as young as some of these other guys who are in his draft class. Sam Darnold, for example, is 22, so there is a little bit of an age gap there as well, so it's not totally fair to compare Sam Darnold to Baker Mayfield. But in terms of how good are they right now, well, I don't think there's any question. Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback out of his draft class going into the 2019 season, for that one season at least. One thing that has to be talked about Baker Mayfield, and everyone brings up whether it's off the field or on the field, is his confidence. This is a confident guy, and he believes he can make any throw, and he can make just about any throw. Like on this one, it's going to be a cover 1 robber, and what's going to happen here is there's going to be a slant route on the top half of the screen, which is actually a pretty decent way to beat a cover 1 robber, as long as you can make this throw before that receiver gets into that zone where the safety will be in charge of covering in the middle of the screen. So Baker Mayfield is going to have to make this decision quickly, and look at how quickly he makes this decision. Basically, the second he sees that Cleveland Brown has a chance to get open, he's already in the throwing motion. He's already getting ready to make this throw. He hits the receiver easily, and again, it's just too easy of a completion. That's just a quick read and a quick throw, and also an accurate throw for another solid gain. And it's not just some more basic reads like that one where he says, okay, I see the coverage, now I just have to make a throw quickly because I know that I have a receiver running a slant route and a cover 1 robber, so I just got to get it over through that receiver quickly. It's not something simple like that he's only good at. He can also be good at more of these complex situations. Like if you take a look at this one, it's going to be a cover 2 zone, and that's the receiver that he's going to want to try to throw to here, which is going to be his tight end on the top half of the screen. So this part isn't necessarily anything too complex. However, it's going to get a little bit more interesting in a second. What's going to happen here is actually the Baltimore edge rusher on the bottom half of the screen is going to do a very solid job of winning his one-on-one matchup and getting pretty close to Baker here. Not to mention, take a look at those two interior linemen right over there. They're both, again, doing a good job of staying in the area they need to be in, and if Baker were to try to step too far up in the pocket, then one of them could easily get a sack out of it, so Baker kind of has to stay where he's at. He can maybe take a step in, but he can't go too far in, and not to mention, if he does want to hit a receiver over them, he's going to have to throw it pretty high up because they can get their hands over and maybe knock the ball away. And not to mention, the receiver he does want to hit is going to be over those two interior linemen, so he's going to have to make sure he throws it above the interior lineman, but also he can't throw it too high because then it could get picked off by a safety. So even though he would rather wait an extra second, he doesn't have an extra second. He's going to have to throw this ball now, so it's going to be a very small window for him to try to fit it through, but look at how he still does fit it through that window. That's kind of the thing about Baker. He just has this uncanny accuracy. He just makes some great throws, and he makes great throws consistently too. It's not like he'll make some great throws but then miss some great throws. I mean, for the most part, 9 out of 10 times, this guy puts the ball exactly where he wants it to be, and that's what makes him so effective. This next play is another one that I found pretty fascinating. It's going to be a cover 1 linebacker blitz, and that's actually okay for Cleveland because they have a concept designed to beat man coverage. The first thing you'll notice is those 3 Cleveland Browns on top half of the screen will be running those routes. However, that's not really what I'm going to talk about here. Instead, what you're going to take a look at is going to be on the bottom half of the screen. First, what they're going to do is have the one receiver who's on the bottom half of the screen move out to try to get into the way of that charger right over there, and then from there, it'll simply send a halfback out to the bottom half of the screen. It's what you would call a rubber route, as this could allow the halfback to get wide open open potentially. And one thing you'll notice is that as of right here, one thing right off the bat is that there is going to be a Charger who's kind of in the way of the halfback. So if Baker does throw it in that direction, he'll probably have to lob it a little bit, meaning it will take longer for the throw to get over there. And if you look at Mayfield, he quickly sees that, but then quickly moves over to look at his receiver and seeing if he's going to do a good job of making sure he gets in the way of the linebacker, and he doesn't feel like he is. For one thing, look at how far over that linebacker is to the left side of the screen than the receiver is. There's a solid few yards. So at this point, if the receiver does move up too far to the top half of the screen, that could be an illegal pick play, because you can't make a pick play that far down the field. You can kind of get in the way and they won't really call it. However, if you run into him, then they probably will call that a penalty. So Baker is going to say, you know what? I'm going to abandon this assignment. Instead, I'm going to look up to the top half of the screen. As of right now, he's looking to throw, and really what he wants to throw right at this point would be to that Brown over there. However, that Brown isn't really open. There is another Cleveland Brown who's a little bit more open over there, but again, we're watching a still shot here, not watching things happen live. It's a lot tougher to figure these things out when they're only happening in a split second than when you have all the time in the world to figure them out. Baker does finally look up and make a throw in that direction, but at that point, it's too late and the ball doesn't even come close. I actually think he just threw it away at that point because he knew no one was open. So again, there was a lot to unpack there. But why did I bring up that play? Well, for several reasons. One, I just found it interesting how, I think it's a good sign to show that he will look for other options if he feels like his first option isn't there. But for me personally, I think he still probably should have just played it safe and just hit his halfback. Yes, it wouldn't have gained as many yards as you wanted to, but it probably still would have gained some yards, and that's what's important. But I also think there's some good there. I do think it is good that he can look up to the top half of the screen and try to find somebody open, even if he didn't actually end up getting somebody open. I just found that play fascinating. There was some good and some bad from that play. Baker is not all perfect, but I do think it goes to show that, again, that's a veteran-like play where he's passing up on that first option, and it was a first down and 5, so he probably was thinking, let's just get the first down here, let's not try to gain 2 yards, who cares? I have a feeling that did factor in. However, personally, I do think he probably should have just played it safe. But again, I can't hate on him too much, and it is promising to show that he can, look over and try to find more options. However, it is worth mentioning now, I've talked a lot of positives, but I have him at number 19. I don't have him as a top 18 quarterback in the league right now, and there is a reason for it. And probably my biggest criticism of Baker is kind of something I've already brought up as a strength. He feels like he can make every throw he can, and a lot of times he can, but not every time. He can fit the ball through very tight windows, but sometimes there isn't even a window, but he still will try to make that throw. It's very similar to when I talked about Jameis Winston earlier, where he will try to fit the ball through tight windows even when he definitely shouldn't. Like, this play will be a good example. It's going to be a cover 3 zone blitz, and they're going to be running play action, and then those will be the routes that the Cleveland Browns receivers will be running. So again, this is a pretty similar concept that I talk about all the time. You run play action, get the linebackers to move in, try to hit a receiver over the top of them. If you watched any of my videos about quarterbacks, I probably brought this up at some point. However, this play is not going to be able to work right off the bat, largely because of that Charger right there. Since this is going to be a 5-man rush and not just a typical 4-man rush, then the halfback had to run over to try to block that Charger. He didn't do a great job, and now Baker Mayfield is in trouble. So if you're Mayfield, what's one thing you can do? Well, one thing you can do is just try to run outside the pocket, because there is no containment here. And that is what he's going to do. He's going to run down, and now he has a receiver who is kind of open. This is clearly a tough play. This is not an easy play to make. If you're playing Madden, you probably won't want to make this play, let alone if you're actually playing actual football. One key reason for that is simply just the fact that Baker Mayfield is on the run and also on the run to his left, and it's much more difficult to throw across your body like that than it would be if you're on your run to the right. And he'll be running closer to the inside of the field, which you never want to do. You never want to throw to a receiver who's closer to the inside of the field than you are. Granted, it will actually even out by the time Baker Mayfield actually makes this throw, but at this point, the receiver is on the hash marks, whereas Baker Mayfield is a couple yards close to the bottom half of the screen of the hash marks. So it's going to be a tough throw for him to make, and look at how the defensive back is able to leap up in front of the receiver and get an interception out of it. It's just a throw that Baker Mayfield shouldn't have made, and I think in hindsight he would have said, you know what, I made a mistake on that one. I mean, rookie quarterbacks are going to make mistakes. I'm not going to beat him up too much for that one, but that is something that I have noticed about him. And if I'm doing a right now list, it is something that has to be mentioned, is he will make some mistakes like that. This time it's going to be a cover 2 zone, and the way it's going to work is that they're going to have their tight end right over there, basically run a curl route, which would be right inside that Charger who's in charge of covering the middle of the screen. And also worth noting, the number 2 receiver on the bottom half of the screen is going to be running that route right there, which in theory will force the Charger who's covering that zone second closest to the bottom half of the screen to move further to the right side of the screen. However, the Chargers have some smart players, and that's actually not going to be totally what happened. Well, yes, the Brown that that Baker would probably want to throw it to here is doing a good job of running his route, and he's going to get open here. The Charger, who is in charge of covering the zone second closest to the bottom half of the screen, is doing a great job of reading Baker Mayfield, which is kind of what you want to do in zone coverage. You want to be constantly looking at the quarterback and seeing where the quarterback is going to be throwing the ball to. So Baker Mayfield does try it, and that's just a bad decision once again, and it results in yet another interception. I mean, that is something that happens when you watch Baker Mayfield play football. One more play. First things first, what you'll see is that Cleveland Brown is in motion, and since there is a Raven following him, this gives Cleveland a pretty good idea that it is going to be man coverage. And so because of that, that's the receiver that Baker is going to want to try to hit here. That's going to be his guy. He likes the route that he's running, and so he's going to try to throw it in that direction. However, he isn't actually going to get too open, as you see. So okay, sometimes that happens. You'll have to just try to find somebody else who's open. As we've seen before, Baker Mayfield can absolutely move onto his second read or his third read, even when he already has one read that he really wants to make work. But again, Baker Mayfield sees a mailbox he can try to fit this through, and that's exactly what he's going to do. And that Baltimore Raven does a great job of winning his one-on-one matchup there and getting yet another interception. Those were all interceptions, and honestly, that's a lot of what Baker Mayfield's interceptions looked like. They were just him making bad decisions when he thought that he had a very small window, and so he decided to take it. Being a quarterback in football is often a lot like being a three-point shooter in basketball. Sure, Steph Curry can make some circus shots sometimes, just like Baker Mayfield can make some unbelievable throws sometimes, but that doesn't mean they should be trying to make these tough throws every time, just like Steph shouldn't try to take contested threes from half court. You try to give yourself as good of an opportunity as possible on each play. That doesn't mean that Steph Curry couldn't make a contested three from half court, just like Baker Mayfield can make some very difficult throws, but you want to make things easier on yourself if you can. But again, here's another one. It's going to be man coverage. This is actually a cover 0, and the Cleveland Browns have a receiver running right there who's going to be running out to the top half of the screen. And as you see, he's going to do a pretty decent job of getting open. However, Baker Mayfield's in trouble. He's going to get flushed out of the pocket, so he's going to try to make a throw on the run here. So again, tough throw for him to make. He has a bit of a bigger window, but just more difficult because he's going to be throwing on the run here. However, he's going to take the shot anyways, and it pays off as they're able to get the completion. That's also another thing I've noticed about Baker Mayfield. He's very good at throwing on the run. That's definitely one of his strengths. I mean, honestly, you couldn't ask for a better throw than that, and he did it on the run. They got as many yards as possible while Baker Mayfield didn't even have his feet planted. I mean, if that's not an impressive throw, and quite frankly, I don't know what an impressive throw is. And that's one more thing I want to talk about with Baker Mayfield. It's something that I have brought up in the past, is Baker Mayfield throws a very good deep ball, and this one will be an example of that. Where first things first, you are going to notice that there is going to be a Cleveland Brown in motion, and this time no Baltimore Raven follows him. So this gives you a pretty good idea that it's probably going to be zone coverage. And it is, and in fact, it's actually going to be a cover 2 zone, and the Cleveland Browns have a receiver running a go route right over there, and that can actually be a decent way to beat a cover 2 zone, because yes, there is a Baltimore Raven who's going to be deep right there. However, at that point, it basically just turns into a one-on-one matchup, and if Baker Mayfield feels like his receiver has good leverage in this matchup, then he could take a shot there. And after this play develops, what you're going to see, for one thing, is that a Baltimore Raven is actually going to do a pretty decent job of staying deep with that receiver, and the reason for that is because it's not uncommon that you'll have a receiver just run a curl route to try to get into a gap in coverage in between the safeties and the linebackers. That is something you will sometimes do. And because Baltimore is making sure that is not something they're going to let the Cleveland Browns do against them, one other thing they're doing is that safety, who's on the bottom half of the screen, is actually playing pretty far in. I mean, if you look at him comparative to the other safety is a solid 3 yards further deep than he is. And so, of course, if we see this, then Baker Mayfield obviously sees this, so he is going to take a shot deep down there. And look at this throw he's going to put on. I mean, the receiver was open, but it was also just perfect timing and a perfect throw from Baker Mayfield, so it looked easy, but Baker Mayfield kind of made it look easy. Clearly, this guy has a ton of talent. The talent and what he puts on the field is just, you can't question it. What he did his rookie season was really impressive. Now, I know people try to look at his, off the field stuff and off the field comments and say, oh, he's a bad leader. And by a lot of people, I mean Colin Coward. But, I don't really care what you are off the field or whatever. Maybe he is annoying off the field. Maybe he isn't. I don't know. I've never met the guy. All I can talk about is what he's put on tape. And what he's put on tape is pretty impressive.